Seldom is the name of Vecna spoken except in a hushed voice. Vecna was, in his time, one of the mightiest of all wizards who forged a great empire through dark magic and conquest. For all his power, Vecna couldn't escape his own mortality. He began to fear death and take steps to prevent his end from ever coming about. The Lich Lord Vecna presides over villainous mages, conspiring politicians, and envious servants as the dark god of necromancy, undeath, and secrets. Once a dangerously clever and powerful archmage turned lich, his hunger for dominion over all mysteries and obsession with conquering the pantheon led to his own dissolution, leaving behind only his left hand and eye. Vecna calls no place among the plains his home, instead wandering in search of powerful artifacts and secrets to further his unknowable plots. One of the most prominent villains in all of Dungeons & Dragons, Vecna is an antagonist in many official game modules and official media, most commonly associated with the campaign setting Greyhawk. He is also the final antagonist of the first campaign of the Dungeons & Dragons web series, Critical Role, and the unseen overarching antagonist of the first season of its animated adaptation The Legend of Vox Machina. The true story of who Vecna was as a human is clouded by rumor and hearsay, but many agree he was a wizard from Oerth, the focal planet of the D&D setting Greyhawk. No one can truly say why or how, but Vecna eventually became powerful enough to transform himself into one of the game's earliest examples of a lich. When his physical form started to succumb to the ravages of time, Vecna called upon the forbidden arts of necromancy to transform himself into a lich. Then he forged to a fallen paladin known as Cass, his personal guard, a terrifying weapon known as the Sword of Cass. Later, Cass turned on Vecna and used the sword to sever the archlich's hand and put out his eye. No one knows why Cass betrayed Vecna. After their clash, Cass and Vecna disappeared for ages. Then Vecna emerged later as the ruler of the wasteland domain of Tavag in the Shadowfell. He spent several centuries questing for his severed hand and eye. More recently, Vecna decamped to the outer planes, where he grew so powerful that he became a god. He has many ardent worshippers, all hungry for a taste of his immense power. Orcus, the demon prince of undeath, taught Vecna a ritual that would allow him to live on as a lich. Beyond death, he became the first and greatest of all liches. Even though his body gradually withered and decayed, Vecna continued to expand his evil dominion. As a lich, Vecna was worshipped for his power and his obsession with learning secrets. One particularly zealous devotee, Cass, became Vecna's right-hand man as the lich formed an empire in Oerth. Vecna even gave him the Sword of Cass to show his loyalty and authority. But the sword was corrupted by Vecna's own evil, and it eventually drove Cass to attack his master during a crucial ritual. So formidable and hideous was his temper that his subjects feared to speak his name. He was the Whispered One, the master of the Spider Throne, the Undying King, and the Lord of the Rotted Tower. Some say that Vecna's lieutenant Cass coveted the Spider Throne for himself, or that the sword his lord made for him seduced him into rebellion. Whatever the reason, Cass brought the Undying King's rule to an end in a terrible battle that left Vecna's tower a heap of ash. Of Vecna, all that remained were one hand and one eye, grisly artifacts that still seek to work the Whispered One's will in the world. According to some, Vecna had an obsession with acquiring and maintaining secrets, believing them to be the source of true power. He was precise and calculating in his actions, but was at times prone to bouts of intense rage. Vecna believed that every being in existence held a single secret that could be manipulated to bring about its destruction. Uncovering that secret and exploiting its truth were the key to gaining dominion over others. As a deity, Vecna did not claim a domain, but instead wandered the entire multiverse. He maintained the citadel of Covetous, originally on the quasi-elemental plane of ash near the border to the negative energy plane, which he had wrested away from the Doomguard long before. The citadel was used by Vecna as his fortress, which he visited regularly, to gloat on the despair of his defeated enemies. Later, it became his prison as it was drawn into the domains of dread by the dark powers. He also kept a hidden black tower within the plane of Pandemonium. Vecna possessed a number of tremendous powers, including the ability to paralyze others with his touch, inherently cast a variety of powerful spells, and alter reality at will. He was immune to disease, disintegration, mind-controlling powers, and a variety of other debilitating effects. His sensory perception extended far beyond that of mortal beings, up to a range of 10 miles, and could similarly perceive anything within the same range as any of his worshippers. He could also feel whenever someone uncovered, disclosed, or otherwise wrote down any secret that contained information that could affect the lives of 500 people or more. Vecna's evil influence continued even after death. Once enough cults and followers were amassed, he was reborn as a demigod. He did try to ascend to full godhood, but Vecna ended up banished to Covetous himself, which was then transformed into a domain of dread in Ravenloft. Despite centuries of plotting and new attempts to become a greater deity, Covetous became Vecna's prison. However, this was not the end of Vecna's machinations. Even within the realm of Covetous, the demigod plotted and schemed, formulating what could possibly be his greatest plan. Over the course of centuries, Vecna began siphoning the essence of a fellow demigod named Luz, elevating himself to the level of a greater god. Now a true deity, Vecna set his sights upon Sigil, the heart of the multiverse. With his newfound power, Vecna became the first deity to pierce the defenses of Sigil, an action that caused a great disturbance within the multiverse. Vecna was in his prime. He had undisputed control over Sigil, a feat that no other had accomplished, and the literal multiverse at his fingertips. He was in a position where he could rewrite or even destroy the world, and all worlds at a moment's notice. At this moment in his history, Vecna was the single greatest threat, and like any great threat in the universe constructed by Gary Gygax, it was up to a ragtag group of adventurers to deal with it. With the aid of Lady Pain, the patron and protector of Sigil, a group of adventurers entered Sigil and confronted Vecna. Despite his power, the godly Lich was defeated by their hands, Ilz's essence being stripped from him as he fled. He just barely managed to retain enough power to remain as a lesser deity. To this day, Vecna continues to roam the realms, plotting his next scheme to regain his lost power. Vecna carried with him an unholy dagger named Afterthought and protected himself with bracers of armor and a powerful cloak of resistance. While not among his possessions per se, there existed two powerful artifacts in the multiverse that drew their power from his undead body: his eye and his left hand. For those that sought these artifacts, accessing their power required vicious acts of self-mutilation, either by gouging out one's own eye or forcibly removing a left hand. Over the years, Vecna's hand came into the possession of Arkhan the Cruel, lieutenant of Tiamat, while his eye was rumored to belong to Emerikal the Planewalker, both of whom spent significant time on Avernus. Even items Vecna wore as a mortal, such as a set of his robes, absorbed tremendous magical power from the undead lord and bestowed a fraction of it upon future wearers. A character of the same name appears as the main antagonist of the popular TV show Stranger Things, making his debut in the 4th season. He is not an adaptation of the character, however, but is named as such by the main characters based on certain similarities. Notably, the two characters are master spellcasters who are given a chance to achieve great power after a betrayal by an underling.